I enter a nightmare from which I wake repeatedly, only to find a greater terror awaiting me. All the things I dread most, all of the things I dread for others, manifest in such vivid detail, I can't help but believe they're real. Each time I wake, I think, at last this is over, but it isn't. It's only the beginning of a new chapter of torture. How many ways do I watch Prim die? Relive my father's last moments, feel my own body ripped apart. This is the nature of the tracker-jacker venom, so carefully created to target the place where fear lives in your brain. When I finally do come to my senses, I lie still, waiting for the next onslaught of imagery. But eventually I accept that the poison must have finally worked its way out of my system, leaving my body racked and feeble. I'm still lying on my side, locked in the fetal position. I lift my hand to my eyes to find them sound, untouched by ants that never existed. Simply stretching out my limbs requires an enormous effort. So many parts of me hurt. It doesn't seem worthwhile taking inventory of them. Very, very slowly, I manage to sit up. I'm in a shallow hole, not filled with the humming orange bubbles of my hallucination, but with old, dead leaves. My clothing's damp, but I don't know whether pond water, dew, rain, or sweat is the cause. For a long time, all I can do is take tiny sips from my bottle and watch a beetle crawl up the side of a honeysuckle bush. How long have I been out? It was morning when I lost reason. Now it's afternoon. But the stiffness in my joints suggests that more than a day has passed, even two possibly. If so, I'll have no way of knowing which tribute survived that tracker-jacker attack. Not Glimmer or the girl from District 4. But there was the boy from District 1, both tributes from District 2, and PETA. Did they die from the stings? Certainly if they lived, their last days must have been as horrid as my own. And what about Rue? She's so small. It wouldn't take much venom to do her in. But then again, the tracker-jackers would have had to catch her, and she had a good head start. A foul, rotten taste pervades my mouth, and the water has little effect on it. I drag myself over to the honeysuckle bush and pluck a flower. I gently pull the stamen through the blossom and set the drop of nectar on my tongue. The sweetness spreads through my mouth, down my throat, warming my veins with memories of summer and my home woods and Gail's presence beside me. For some reason, our discussion from that last morning comes back to me. We could do it, you know. What? Leave the district, run off, live in the woods. You and I, we could make it. And suddenly, I'm not thinking of Gail, but of PETA. And PETA, he saved my life, I think, because by the time we met up, I couldn't tell what was real and what the tracker-jacker venom had caused me to imagine. But if he did, and my instincts tell me he did, what for? Is he simply working the lover boy angle he initiated at the interview? Or was he actually trying to protect me? And if he was, what was he doing with those careers in the first place? None of it makes sense. I wonder what Gail made of the incident for a moment, and then I push the whole thing out of my mind because for some reason, Gail and PETA do not coexist well together in my thoughts. So I focus on the one really good thing that happened since I landed in the area. I have a bow and arrows. A full dozen arrows, if you count the one I retrieved in the tree. They bear no trace of the noxious green slime that came from Glimmer's body, which leads me to believe that might not have been wholly real. But they have a fair amount of dried blood on them. I can clean them later, but I do take a minute to shoot a few into a nearby tree. They are more like the weapons in the training center than my ones at home, but who cares? That I can work with. The weapons give me an entirely new perspective on the games. I know I have tough opponents left to face, but I am no longer merely prey that runs and hides or takes desperate measures. If Cato broke through the trees right now, I wouldn't flee, I'd shoot. And I find I'm actually anticipating the moment with pleasure. But first, I have to get some strength back in my body. I'm very dehydrated again, and my water supply is dangerously low. The little padding I was able to put on by gorging myself during prep time in the capital is gone, plus several more pounds as well. My hip bones and ribs were more prominent than I remember them being since those awful months after my father's death. And then there are my wounds to contend with. Burns, cuts and bruises from the smashing into the trees, and the tracker-jacker stings, which are as sore and swollen as ever. I treat my burns with the ointment and try dabbing a bit on my stings as well, but it has no effect on them. My mother knew a treatment for them, some type of leaf that could draw out the poison, but she seldom had cause to use it, and I don't even remember the name, let alone its appearance. Water first, I think. You can hunt along the way now. It's easy to see the direction I came from by the path of destruction my crazed body made through the foliage. So I walk off in the other direction, hoping my enemies are still lie locked in the surreal world of tracker-jacker venom. I can't move too quickly, my joints reject any abrupt motion, but I establish the slow hunter's tread I use when tracking game. Within a few minutes, I spot a rabbit and make my first kill with the bow and arrow. It's not my usual clean shot through the eye, but I'll take it. After about an hour, I find a stream, shallow but wide, and more than sufficient for my needs. The sun's hot and severe, so while I wait for my water to purify, I strip down to my underclothes and wade into the mild current. I'm filthy from head to toe. I try splashing, but eventually just lie down in the water for a few minutes, letting it wash off the soot and blood and skin that has started to peel off my burns. After rinsing out my clothes and hanging them on the bushes to dry, I sit on the bank in the sun for a bit, untangling my hair with my fingers. My appetite returns, and I eat a cracker and a strip of beef. With a handful of moss, I polish the blood off my silver weapons.